Hello everyone, my name is Keiko Tomita, President of Tokiwa University, located in Japan. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at the ICU Regional Conference, Tokyo. My presentation today reviews long-standing attempts by the universities in Japan to internationalize their education. The COVID-19 pandemic, which started at the end of 2019, has dramatically disrupted cross-border movements of students worldwide. Japan is not the exception. But today I'd like to argue that the pandemic offers an opportunity to reappraise the global education program in Japan and rebuild new strategies for internationalization. Well, we are living in an increasingly globalized world. The advances in transportation and communication have made people, goods, and money interact worldwide, closer than ever. As globalization advances, there's been need for global education. Global education, here it means the education that opens people's eyes and minds to the realities of the world and awakens them to bring about a world of greater justice, equity, and human rights for all. There has been commonly shared views among educators that in a rapidly globalized world, it is imperative to introduce global education, which goes beyond just mastering English or understanding any foreign culture. Most recently, the essence of global education is also mainstreamed in the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. That is the action program adopted by the United Nations in 2015 in order to make the world better. The SDGs promote ESD, standing for Education for Sustainable Development. SDGs appeals the importance of fostering the builders of a sustainable society who could promote a culture of peace and diversity. At the forefront of globalization, universities in Japan and the Japanese government as well had well recognized the importance of global education for quite some time. Therefore, even as early as the 1980s, the government had a program to actively enroll foreign students to higher education in Japan. As Japan's international status increases, it is called on to participate more actively in the international efforts to maintain global peace and stability. Domestically as well, various efforts are being made to further promote its internationalization, as the Japanese people became more and more aware of the necessity of internationalization. Most recently, the government had come to consider that it is imperative to increase competitiveness of human resources through internationalization of education. Therefore, since the mid-2000s, the Japanese government also placed an emphasis on deploying young Japanese to study abroad. At the same time, the government started seeing foreign students coming to Japan as potential highly skilled human resources who could possibly contribute to the development of Japanese society. Presently, there are 4 pillars for the official strategies of Japan in promoting global education. First, it announced its support for universities to enhance international compatibility and competitiveness of education. Second, the government supports the programs of universities which try to strengthen academic collaborations and cooperation with relevant counterparts abroad. Third, the government allocated funds to foster study abroad among young students. This includes the scholarship entitled Tobitate Japan. Lastly, it also enhanced the admission of foreign students to be admitted to educational institutions in Japan and enhanced the support system for them. The slide here shows the trends in the number of Japanese students studying abroad since the mid-1990s. As you can see in this graph, the number of Japanese students studying abroad has increased to reach a peak in the year 2004, but declined thereafter. Although the government announced a plan to double the number of Japanese students studying abroad to as high as 120,000 by year 2020, it did not yield visible outcome. It has been hovering at around 60,000 over the past years. So why didn't the number of Japanese studying abroad increase over time? There seems to be several factors and reasons behind. First, the absolute number of young population continues to decline in Japan given a long-lasting low fertility. Furthermore, the high cost needed for study abroad may be heavy financial burden to families under the prolonged economic stagnation in Japan. Some also argue that young generations of Japan has become more inward-looking, showing no interest in matters abroad. The COVID-19, which broke out at the end of year 2019, spread worldwide in no time, affecting the cross-national mobility everywhere. While comparable figures for 2020 and 2021 are not yet available from OECD, which published these numbers, it is easily predictable that number has dramatically dropped during the past 2 years. Well, now let us turn our eyes to the inbound mobility of foreign students to Japan. In the year 2008, the government set the target to enroll as many as 300,000 foreign students in Japan by 2020. It is said that it did reach the target in 2019, 1 year before the target year, if tertiary students and students studying Japanese are counted together. This graph in front of you shows only the number of foreign tertiary students coming to Japan, whose number has risen to 228,400 in 2019. However, with the arrival of COVID-19, the Japanese government introduced a harsh travel and entry restriction into Japan. Although international travel resumed after the fall of 2020, it was quickly followed by the second declaration of state of emergency in January 2021. Consequently, the number of foreign tertiary students dropped consecutively in 2020 and 2021. The study by scholars Nakasato and Kayashima revealed that this drop were more drastic among students who are non-degree seeking and short-term. Well, is it possible for Japan to regain cross-border mobility of students? The information available here seems to drawing a lot of grim picture. With regard to the outbound mobility, recent depreciation of Japanese currency, which is yen, may make study abroad programs more expensive than ever to Japanese students for quite some time. As for the influx of foreign students to Japan, there is a commonly shared view that many have chosen a destination other than Japan, while the Japanese government introduced the harsh entry restriction longer than any other countries. In the age of COVID-19, many schools introduced online learning in international education. The devices include online cultural exchange programs and, so to speak, COIL, C-O-I-L, collaborative online international learning. It is believed that online learning, which has spread quickly in lieu of traditional in-person learning, would remain as one of the key educational modalities. What remains to be seen is if such quasi study abroad programs have changed the perception of students on study abroad, or will it ever instigate their mobility? Well, to conclude my presentation today, I would like to offer some thoughts about internationalization of education in Japan. First, in line with the official strategies of the Japanese government, I think universities in Japan should continue their efforts to enhance the quality of education so as to attract motivated students from all over the world. In other words, the Japanese educational institutions can be magnets of international students by offering the world-class high-quality education. Moreover, universities in Japan should further devise their programs to ease the exchange of students across national borders. To denote a few examples, efforts can be made to increase the number of classes delivered in English and allow smooth exchange of the credit with overseas institutions. Last but not least, universities in Japan should explore the optimal balance of online versus in-person international programs so as to facilitate the mobility of minds, not necessarily physical mobility. Thank you very much for your attention to my presentation and talk. I very much looking forward to receiving your comments and opinions on this topic. Thank you.